greetings. This is an up-to-date program with me, Anna Pershna. Ukraine has been electing the new parliament today. At the early parliamentary elections, more than 2,000 official international observers have worked, 304 from 21 foreign states and 2017 from 20 international organizations. A political expert, Oleksiy Sydorchuk, present in our studio, will tell us about the very election process. Hello, Oleksiy. How can you characterize in general the parliamentary elections 2014?
I think these elections are quite extraordinary. Well, because in our history we hadn't have such elections where some districts were taken from Ukraine, and so then some district elections can be held because of military actions, and so we will have not 450 deputies as usual, but a little less. And so I think it's as ever they're quite unusual, but we also had quite unusual presidential elections.
I see. And well, for example, comparing with the previous parliamentary elections, what can you say? Were there any differences in the organizational process and the very electoral system?
Yes, I think the biggest difference is that we have these districts where the elections can take place because of
occupation,
yes,
and the military actions. Yes.
But there is another difference. I think that well, in these elections, the electoral process on the whole has been more democratic, and there have been less problems with the electoral process. This is, I think, due to the new political configuration that we have now in Ukraine. And so there have been much less electoral fraud during this election, and then we will see what the official results will be. But I think that they will not be very much falsified.
I see. So, and talking about the situation in the polling stations, what can you say? What was it? Were there any road violations, or maybe the long lines and people were disorganized, for example, or nervous?
Well, in these elections, I personally could say that there were. I saw no big problems at the polling stations. Even comparing to the presidential elections, which this year, there were no lines as they were on the presidential election, because less people just. Less people took part in the elections. So and also there was some improvement in the quality of work of electoral commissions. This, I think, due to the fact that on the presidential elections there were some problems with the filling of this electoral commissions, and on these elections there was no such problems. All electoral commissions have been filled with people, so they worked better. They worked better.
Okay. And what about the pre-electoral campaign? How do you think, was it really different from the previous pre-electoral campaign?
In some ways, it was different, because there were some electoral violations, such as bribery and an abuse of administrative resource. But as far as I know, the official, the observers from Ukrainian side, such as POR and Committee of Voters of Ukraine, they told that these violations did take place, but there were much less violations than the previous elections. And what was, I think, similar is that well, the biggest problem is the single-member districts. They are, well, the cause of trouble in Ukraine, but
why?
It is well, because in these districts it's quite there is logic that only one candidate wins. So when such rules are set, many candidates just every kind of way to win, and then often they will resort to some unlawful activities.
What about the ways to control the transparency of the electoral process? I mean, the surveillance cameras or the observers themselves. What can you say about this? How the work was organized in this way?
Well, as I know, this surveillance cameras, they only worked on the previous elections,
Yes.
and so they didn't had any real impact on the process. So it was like wasted money. But I think that the real control could be exerted by the domestic observers, by the foreign observers. So it's like nothing new can be invented here. It's like the willingness of people to control the process.
I see.
And on this election, the work of observers, it was somewhat easier because there was no such
influence to the people's choice.
Yeah.
I see. And what about the atmosphere, the psychological atmosphere at the polling stations? What can you say about the moods of people who came voting?
I suppose that we can say that on these elections there is a quite striking difference from the presidential elections. In May we had we had many hopes, and so many people were wanted to vote. In these elections there were I don't know if I can speak for all people, but there was some disappointment with the events of the recent months. And so there wasn't so much optimism on these elections, but still I think that the atmosphere was better than on the previous parliamentary elections, because we still have hopes that the new parliament will change somehow as the course of events. So.
And in general, the attendance of the electoral districts, how was it? Were there many people who came, or there were just some districts that were empty and?
The turnout was lower, as far as I know, right now, than on the previous presidential elections, and. But this is understandable because on the one hand there is also less people go into the parliamentary elections than as into the presidential elections, and also we have this some level of disappointment. But it was I think it was enough to make the new parliament I think legitimate.
I see. So you think that these parliamentary elections, they can be considered transparent, democratic, and honest?
In general terms, I think yes. There were some violations, I said, and during the electoral campaign and during the election day, but they constitute quite an improvement over the last parliamentary elections, which were held in a not very democratic manner. These elections, as they were closer to the
European standards.
Yes, but I think as they didn't match well, I think as most transparent elections in Ukraine, which were in 2006 and 2007. But it was a step in the right direction.
What do you think about what do you think about the number of candidates in the single electoral districts and the parties who were?
Well, it is.
I mean the number.
Yeah, it is very common in Ukraine that there are too many parties and too many candidates. But I think everyone got used to it. And so well, we have now in some troubled districts this tendency changed, but only due to the fact that that many candidates just didn't see how they can win in such districts and as in Donetsk or Lugansk regions. And in other regions, there was as usual many candidates, but I think people just they still as they get used to it, so they can choose among them.
Don't you think that people are a little bit frustrated over such a big number of candidates, for example, and they cannot, and this can influence negatively on their choice?
Maybe, but I think this influence will not be it will not be very large. As I said, people with each year, I think Ukrainian voters they getting more conscious about their choice, so they can get more information about the candidates. They can choose more according to their rational motives. Yeah, there is a problem with we have this new problem, relatively new, of the candidates which are technical and which have the same surname as that very popular candidates which has a chance to win. But I think it's as even 2012 election has shown, this not will work because people still they can understand who is the real candidate and who is just technical candidate for some other candidate.
I see. Do you think that the new parliament that was already chosen, yes, will change the future of Ukraine?
That's a good question. I think many people is now wondering about it. I think that it is quite clear that the new parliament will be the most pro-European in Ukrainian history, because we hadn't have such parliaments in our history. Because majority of the deputies that will become deputies, they belong to the political forces that are
pro-European.
Yes, as it declares as a pro-European choice. So I think it is a big step forward. But the big problem is if this new parliament will be able to realize these reforms,
the hopes, yes, of people. What about the reforms? How do you think, which reforms should be adopted the first one?
I cannot say about the first one, the second one. There is a
well,
result of
which reforms are in priority? Let's say like this.
I think maybe the first reform which should be adopted is the change of the electoral system, because although it is quite unlikely that they will change it, because electoral system change only before the elections, so we have this negative trend that political force changes the electoral system in order to bring more deputies to the next parliament. And if the new parliament will in its first day adopt new system, and they think that a proportional system should be this new system with so-called preferential lists, where people can choose not only parties but also candidates within the parties. It will be a big step forward. So as electoral rules will be determined when already 5 or 4 years before the next elections, and so that everybody can get used to it. And another reforms, well, there are many reforms that should be made in as the economic sphere. the tax code should be changed. Well, the new law on judiciary.
Judicial reform should be made, of course.
Well,
Yes.
there is a lot of reforms, and I cannot say which is more
important and which is of the secondary importance.
Yeah, we have a situation when we need to adopt all reforms at a time, I think.
I see. And you think that the new parliament will manage to do this? As a citizen, as a citizen,
not sure.
as an expert,
I think some reforms will be implemented. Some reforms maybe on the some reforms on the financiation, on the process of the funding of the parties, which is not very transparent right now. I think some reforms could be implemented, but there is a big doubt about this block of economic reforms, because they could somehow influence the interests of the new parties, which will be hoping to enter as the executive branch and also preserve these old rules. So I think some reforms from the political spectrum can be implemented, but there will be I think big problems with other economic reforms.
I see. Well, thank you very much, Oleksiy, for your time dedicated to our program. Unfortunately, our time is over, and we hope for the better future with the new Parliament 2014. I'm saying you goodbye.